Hey there. So you've probably asked a friend to sell something for you, right? Or maybe you've hired a consultant for a big project. Well, guess what? You might have just stepped into a pretty powerful legal relationship without even realizing it. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on something called the contract of agency.
I mean, really think about it for a sec. That time you asked your buddy to list your old bike on an auction site? Or, at the office when you brought on a freelance designer to act on the company's behalf. These really common everyday things, they all have this invisible legal thread connecting them.
Yeah, in the eyes of the law, you've likely created what's called an agency relationship. I know, it sounds super formal, maybe a little intimidating, but honestly, it's the bedrock of how so much stuff gets done, from huge business deals to simple favors. So let's dive in and figure out what this whole agency thing is really about.
All right, first things first. To really get a grip on this, we got to know the cast of characters. In an agency relationship, you've got two main players on the field.
First up, we have the principal. You can think of the principal as the director of the movie. They're the boss, the one calling the shots and giving the instructions. So in that bike selling scenario, you are the principal. It's your bike, your rules. And then, of course, you've got the agent. This is the star of the show, the one carrying out the director's vision. So your friend who's actually selling the bike? Yep, they're the agent. They're acting on your behalf, representing you when they deal with potential buyers, who, by the way, are called third parties. The agent is basically your bridge to the rest of the world.
Okay, now this is where people can get a little tripped up. An agent isn't exactly the same as an employee or what the law sometimes calls a servant or even an independent contractor. There's one massive, crucial difference. An independent contractor might build you a deck, and an employee follows your direct orders. But an agent? They have the unique power to create legally binding relationships for you. That contractor can't sign a mortgage for your house, but your agent? They absolutely could. It's a huge deal.
So how is one of these agency relationships actually born? You might be thinking it's all about fancy contracts and lawyers, but not always. It can actually pop into existence in a few different and sometimes surprising ways.
It really boils down to four main paths. The most straightforward is an express agreement. That's when you spell it all out, either verbally or in writing. Simple. But then it can also be implied, meaning your actions and the whole situation just create it, without you officially saying a word. Then there's this thing called ratification. Imagine someone acts on your behalf without permission, but you like the results, so you say, yep, I approve. That's ratification. And last, sometimes the law itself just steps in and says, an agency exists here, usually out of pure necessity in an emergency.
Okay, so once the agency is up and running, it's not the Wild West. This entire relationship is built on a foundation of trust, and with trust come rules. So let's get into the rules of the game, the rights and the duties that make this whole thing work.
So let's talk about what the agent gets out of this deal. First and foremost, they have a right to get paid for their work. That's called remuneration. They also have a right of retainer, which is a fancy way of saying they can take what they're owed directly from any money they collect for you. And a right of lien? That means they can hang on to your property until you pay them. But this next one is super important. They have a right to be indemnified. Basically, if they do everything right but still lose money or get into trouble while following your lawful orders, you, the principal, have to make them whole again. But it is absolutely a two-way street. With those rights come some really serious duties. This is the absolute core of the whole relationship. The agent must follow the principal's instructions. They have to act with reasonable care. They've got to keep good records. And here's the absolute biggest one. They cannot, under any circumstances, put their own interests ahead of the principal's. No side deals, no secret profits. This isn't just a suggestion. Breaking this trust can land them in a world of legal trouble. Their loyalty has to be 100% with the principal. Period.
All right, so we've got the internal rules of the relationship straight. But what happens when the agent actually goes out and makes a deal with someone else? Who's legally responsible if things go south? Now we're getting to the really critical stuff.
So here it is, the million-dollar question. The agent signs a contract, but they're doing it for the principal. If something goes wrong, who gets sued? The agent? The principal? The answer, and this is key, all hinges on one simple thing. What did the person on the other side of the deal actually know?
Let's unpack this. Scenario 1, the principal is disclosed. This means everyone knows who the agent is working for. Say, I'm Jane, representing XYZ Corp. In this case, XYZ Corp is on the hook, not Jane. Simple. Scenario 2, the principal is unnamed. Here, the third party knows Jane is an agent for someone, but they don't know who. Guess what? The principal is still the one who's liable. But now for the risky one. Scenario 3, the principal is undisclosed. The third party has no idea an agent is even involved. They think they're just making a deal with Jane, person to person. In that situation, Jane is personally on the hook for the contract. Ouch.
Okay, so like any good story, the agency relationship has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So how does it all wrap up? Let's talk about the final chapter, termination. Broadly speaking, there are two ways this can come to a close. First, the parties themselves can end it. The principal can say, "You're fired." The agent can say, "I quit." Or they can both just agree that the job is done. Easy enough. But then there's the other path, operation of law. This is when it ends automatically, whether they wanted to or not. Things like the project being finished, or if the principal goes bankrupt. And, well, if either the principal or the agent dies, the agency is definitely automatically over.
So, it seems pretty cut and dried, right? Every agency has an expiration date. But what if that wasn't always true? What if I told you that some agency relationships can't be ended? What if they could be permanent?
And the answer is a surprising yes. It's called an irrevocable agency. This happens when the agent doesn't just work for you, but they have their own financial skin in the game. For instance, say you owe your agent a bunch of money, and you give them the authority to sell your car to pay off that specific debt you owe them. Well, in that case, you can't just wake up one day and cancel their authority. They have a personal interest in making that sale happen. It's this fascinating little exception that protects the agent. And it really makes you think, doesn't it? When does a simple favor become an unbreakable bond?